Hajime Kashimo, a sorcerer said to have been roaming the world around 400 years ago and was one of the many sorcerers to have made a binding vow with Kenjaku in order to reawaken hundreds of years later. What is up guys, I don't usually make videos on characters who have been newly introduced into the manga, but whilst reading over the Culling games, there is one particular character who just seems like they are going to play a massive role in this insane arc. That is of course Hajime Kashimo. Not much is known about his character since he's only appeared once, but there are some leads to figuring out who and what Hajime is, as well as the sort of role he played 400 years prior. But before we get into this video, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new and hit the notification bell to stay updated on my latest uploads. This video will definitely contain spoilers from the manga. This video is sponsored by Fandomaniacs. So what exactly is Fandomaniacs? Well, it's a store which specifically caters to us anime fans, and with their help I was able to produce this video you guys are watching now. Anyway, since the majority of us here are Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer fans, this store has some really cool merch of the series. I know it's quite hard to find some quality Jujutsu Kaisen clothing anywhere, but I can assure you these guys have some really good taste, which is also affordable. They've recently put out some new clothing including the famous sorcerer trio, Yuji, Gojo and Megami. Another one of my favorites would have to be the Jujutsu Kaisen bomber jacket, where you can customize your own name onto it. Not only do they have Jujutsu Kaisen, I know that even Demon Slayer merch is hard to come by. They've got some really cool t-shirts and even jackets, but for those who aren't interested in Jujutsu Kaisen or Demon Slayer, they've got a wide variety of anime clothing such as Tokyo Revengers, Attack on Titan, One Piece and many more. If you guys are interested, I've got my own little cool discount code ARZIN10 to get the merch for much cheaper. The link will be down in the description below. This will also support me massively in making future content, but anyways, let's get right back into the video. From the looks of it, Hajime looks like the real deal and is someone who most of us have been keeping tabs on since he uttered some unfamiliar words in his short cameo. But in this video I want to dive a little deeper on Hajime Kashimo, and that is uncovering the true origins and inspiration of where and what his character may have been inspired from within Japanese mythology. Alongside this, we'll also jump into some theories on what Hajime's curse technique could be and what role he may play in these intense Culling games. So without further ado, let's get straight in. So, Hajime Kashimo made his official appearance in chapter 158 of the manga. This all went whilst Megami, Yuji and Panda were getting Hikari and Kirara up to speed about what had just happened in Shibuya, as well as Gojo's current situation. When Megami reveals he is the head of the Zenin clan to Hikari, a Kogane appears out of nowhere. This Kogane announces a new rule stating, a player has added a rule to the Culling game. Rule number 9. Players can now view the information of other players, such as names, points, number of times they've added rules, and reside in colony. This is where we are then switched to seeing a very new character with a villainous glare. But we then get to see the full picture, with Hajime Kashimo in the middle of a river, looking at the person who he had just obliterated. This victim was absolutely bloodied up, as Hajime's Kogane informs him that he now has 5 more points. But from this interaction alone, we sort of understand what kind of person Hajime is, saying back to the Kogane, "Of course I got points, I killed him." Whilst biting the nail of his thumb, Hajime mentions how the people he's come across so far have all been weaklings, and how 400 years ago his opponents were a little bit better than this. Hajime mentions how he was around 400 years ago, which would mean it was during the Edo period, so keep that back in your minds, I'll get to that very soon. Anywho, the Kogane mentions how Hajime has over 200 points, meaning he's already killed a lot of people in such a short span of time. He then says something really important, and that is asking where Sukuna could possibly be. With 100 points, Hajime makes the decision to add a rule which discloses the information of all players in the Culling games. With this first encounter alone, we got to realize the character we are currently dealing with. He's already diminished a massive amount of sorcerers, and that he is on the search for Ryomen Sukuna. We also understand that 400 years ago, before he got sealed, the time period was the Edo period, which should be interesting for when we theorize the many possibilities of Hajime. Well, from the thumbnail I know you guys are curious as to what relation Hajime may have with the God of Thunder. Recently I stumbled upon a piece of key information. A user by the name of Rumbling Stone broke down what could be the inspiration of Hajime Kashimo on Reddit. If you guys would like to read the whole thing, the link will be in the description below. But what was found out was that there is a Japanese deity called Takemikazuchi, who is considered to be the god of thunder and god of a sword from Japanese mythology. He was also mentioned in the Nihon Shoki, the same book which Ryomen Sukuna derived from. This is where things will get a little more interesting, since the specific name Kashimo may lead us on to a much bigger finding of this mysterious Culling game player. Well, Takemikazuchi was also referred to as KASHIMA-NO-KAMI, being the chief deity in the Kashima shrine, as well as many other shrines in the city of Kashima in Japan. During the Edo period, period, Taka Mikazuchi, or in other words Kashima, was depicted trying to conquer a giant catfish which resides at the Kaname-ISHI, which is translated to spirit rocks. These spirit rocks are usually placed deep underground to keep earthquakes under control, which are caused by giant catfishes or dragons. Crazily enough, in Jujutsu Kaisen Chapter 133, Kenjaku states, in the mid-Edo period, people connected catfishes and earthquakes, and they spoke of this connection as a mystery. They believed that a giant catfish moving underground was the cause of earthquakes. What's more ominous about this statement from Kenjaku was that this was when Yuji ran towards him shouting to give Gojo back, just after Yuji's battle with Mahito. This dialogue at that time is certainly suspicious, since it didn't really have anything to do with the ongoing situation. Anyways, with that said, Taka Mikazuchi, or as we know him as Kashima, is known to be the god of thunder amongst many other things. So what exactly does Hajime Kashimo have to do with this? Well, whilst Hajime was sitting down staring at the person he just devoured, he made a zapping sound effect, as we then see a little lightning between his hair buns. Another crazy fact is that the god of thunder in Japanese mythology is seen to be banging on drums. The drumsticks which the god of thunder used look similar to the sort of weapon which Hajime Kashimo was using, but it's a little bit of a stretch since we can't clearly see it. So with that little hint of thunder and lightning, Hajime Kashimo's curse technique must be something to do with electricity. Although we were just hinted at a few things which could possibly determine what Hajime Kashimo has to do with thunder and lightning, I'm firm on the idea that his curse technique may be electricity related. Something else which was peculiar was Hajime Kashimo appearing in the river, exactly like the Japanese myth where catfish seem to have been the cause of earthquakes, even being mentioned by Kenjaku himself. While we have to understand that in the current timeline of Jujutsu Kaisen, past sorcerers are spoken of as myths. For example, Ryomen Sukuna, he was mentioned to be a 4-armed monster, and that's the trick which Akutami has put into place. He plays around with Japanese mythology to constantly keep us guessing. This is another one of Akutami's tricks, disguising Hajime Kashimo as an entity said to have caused havoc during the Edo period. Now as for that catfish which Kenjaku mentioned, by that I believe he is referring to Hajime Kashimo, since they believed catfishes were the cause of earthquakes, and if we look at the possibility of Kashime's curse technique, which could potentially involve thunder and lightning, the effect of that power alone, if powerful enough, can create an earthquake-like impact. I have another hunch that Hajime Kashimo's curse technique amplifies around large amounts of water. That's why we saw him at the river, because imagine how many people he could affect with his lightning curse technique if they were all to be swimming in water. That could electrocute so many opponents to death. Now let's understand the timeline which Hajime Kashimo was originally from. The story of Kashima in Japanese mythology and the era which Kashimo was from is set in the Edo period, so the correlation between the pair is uncanny. But there's also another major event which happened in the Edo period in Jujutsu Kaisen. I believe it's the only thing mentioned of the Edo period besides Hajime Kashimo. It's unrelated, but it might help if you want to do some digging on the Jujutsu Kaisen timeline between the Edo period. Anyways, it was mentioned in chapter 117, with Megami thinking back on the conversation he had with Gojo. Gojo explains why the Zenin and Gojo clans are both on bad terms, as he states, I think it was during the Edo period, or maybe Keicho. I forgot, but the heads of the respective households killed each other in a fight before aristocracy. Megami asks who the heads of the clans were, with Gojo saying it was a 6 Eyes and Limitless technique user against a 10 Shadows technique user, with the pair having killed each other in the Edo period. However, the Edo period spans for 200 years, so the possibility of Hajime Kashimo and this decisive battle could have aligned with each other. Maybe that's why Kashimo mentions that 400 years ago, things were a little better. But if Hajime Kashimo was alive during the Edo period, and Sukuna was sealed during the Heian period, why did Kashimo ask for the location of Sukuna? There's two possible outcomes to this. The first one being that Kashimo is simply on the hunt for the strongest and heard that Sukuna was reawakened. He must have heard the stories of Sukuna during the Edo period and is curious to see how strong Sukuna is. However, the second one could be that there may be some relation between Kashimo and Sukuna, but I have no clue how. But it seemed as though Kashimo knew him from the way he asked where Sukuna was, if you guys know what I mean. But that part is the most interesting for me on Hajime Kashimo's character. But what theories do you guys have on Sukuna and Kashimo? Be sure to let me know in the comment section below. Anyways, that's all I've got on Hajime Kashimo. He is certainly going to play a huge role in the future of the Culling games, especially with Yuta's fight which recently concluded. Maybe it's time we get to witness Hajime Kashimo in his true form. But what do you guys think about Hajime Kashimo, and what sort of role will he play in the series? Be sure to let me know in the comment section below. As always, like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next one.